Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Thursday morning, progressives, and welcome to the February 13th, 2025 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Catch us on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Email me at richard@wcpt820.com. And also, you can go to the heartlandsignal.com page, and you can catch us there. Most definitely catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There you can get Choose Views, long version and short version. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez, the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath, and of course our wonderful folks out Chicago and our other programs. Make sure you check out CPT on the weekends, guys. And again, check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform, because there's lots of good stuff there, and it's time to share. And what I will tell you that is pretty spectacular is the sharing from you guys that send me things on, that email me things as well as text me things. And shout out to Jennifer D., who sent me some really great stuff that I'm going to talk about this morning in terms of fighting back. And others that have sent me wonderful things. George D., who sends me some great information. Everything is great that you guys send me. And it ranges from, here's the thing, for those who haven't emailed me. It ranges from, hey, Rich, here's some information that you need to know about, like what we got the other day from our good friend up in Ithaca, New York, or from our good friend friends out in California. It's oftentimes, hey, Rich, here's something that's going on in my area that's part of the bigger conversation. Hey, Rich, here's a thing to look into, an idea. Hey, Rich, here's something that we're doing locally. And the list goes on. And at the same time, it's also people that say, hey, Richard, think about this, or maybe approach the subject from this angle. And I appreciate that, because I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And it allows me, frankly, to be able to go, okay, maybe I could lean into this a little bit more forcefully, or less forcefully, as it were, and into something else. So I appreciate the emails and the commentary, because at the end of the day, it's about keeping this thing strong and being informative and cleaning up on aisle 7 when we need to, but most definitely moving us forward as a team. And that's what I want to be able to do. I look at this sometimes like, in the sports venue of, you've got a coach of a team, you got a person that's leading a particular part of something with the team or an organization. The best information comes from the players or the team members who come to the leader or the coach and say, hey, coach, what about this? Doesn't mean that that's always going to be what the coach does, but it certainly gives perspective and allows people to be a part of the process. And that's what I try to do for you guys, is to make this show one that's inclusive and allows you to be part of the process, because that's my version of saying, locking arms with everybody and making sure that we're able to move forward. So that's one of the reasons why I appreciate your calls and appreciate your emails and the letters that you send me. And occasionally someone will send me something that really gets my attention. Okay, so just to let you know that, and I appreciate that, those things coming from you guys. And I've got, like I said, some information that Jennifer D. sent me that we'll talk about a little bit this morning, and then over the next week or so. Now, this is what I want to share with you guys today. We've got a couple of guests that'll be with us this morning in the 6:30 hour, so I got to keep it moving. Dan Protest will be with us today as part of the WTTW First-Hand Initiative, and he'll be talking about that in the 6:30 hour. That's what we have him scheduled for. I believe that's correct. And then Dr. Nathan Shrader will be with us in the 7 o'clock hour. So we'll be busy this morning, keeping you guys informed of those two things that are going on, not only here in the Chicagoland area, but throughout the rest of the country, and how those things affect us all in one way or another. So we'll keep it moving. All right. I will say this before we go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a few items, and then we'll keep it going. But listen, guys. Oh, wait, before I even go there, again, kudos to the team here that kept us from whatever was going on with the alarms yesterday. So just one more time to Henry and one more time to Mike Mercado and the rest of the folks in CFD and CPD. Okay. So listen, y'all, I last night, early this morning, I was like, okay, I just got to deal with this, because if I don't, people are going to think I'm not paying attention. And I know you guys know that I am. But if there were ever a moment where I just shook my head and I went, wow, did America really, did half of America really, really kind of, as the phrase goes, poop the bed? I can say that without getting in any trouble. But good Lord, I come from a time, and many of you can appreciate this. Some of this, what I'm about to say, is generational. But it's also about respect. And I remember a time, Henry, when there was a phrase that was used that said, and some folks might get their feathers ruffled with this one, and that phrase is, sometimes children are to be seen and not heard. And that has an application. Okay? That has an application. But in this sense, what I'm talking about, and some of you may be a couple of sentences ahead of me, and that's okay. I shook my head, and I not in disbelief, but just in pure, wow, America. Anybody that tries to tell me and Henry that this election was about the price of eggs, the price of gas, and all these other distractions and lies and cult-esque things. If it were, and I'm really giving a whole bunch of bandwidth on this one, if it were, then you still, as President of the United States of America, when you are sitting in your office, the executive office of these United States of America, Henry, you do not let another human being of any stature, of any age, of any ilk stand over you and tell people, give people the what for. And you sure as hell do not let that person's 4-year-old child, y'all not hearing me, you sure as hell do not let that person's 4-year-old child give you the what for. I know there are people that would say, oh, but come on, Chew. You know, he was just being, kind, and he wasn't overreacting, and da-da-da-da-da. All these excuses. And it was, come on, Chew. I'm not going for it, Henry. When you're having a business meeting, now, there's been presidents through time that have had children in the Oval Office for photo ops and hangout time. Not during a press conference, and I remember vividly, former President Obama had the little boy in there where he touched his head and he didn't realize he had the same hair and all that. And that was just one of those great, moments of Americana. And when the little boy in the Spider-Man suit was, we've seen that. And presidents kissing babies and all that. But when you're holding a meeting about a dude who we cut a check to for $7 million so he could pay his little Doge boys, and then says nobody bats 1,000, then give us the money back, punk. If nobody bats 1,000, but you're sitting in one of our most treasured departments, a facilitation of benefits for Americans, and you're not batting 1,000, then punk, leave and give us the money back. We don't need you to not bat 1,000. We don't need you to be there in the first place. But the dude who 78 million people said, I want him because he's going to fix the gas prices and he's going to stop those damn Mexicans from coming across the border. And you uppity Negroes are going to be known what your place is. And you women are not going to be able to come into the workplace. And you funny looking people and funny loving people aren't going to be able to have a place. Your boy sat there and let a 4-year-old give him the what for. There is nothing on the planet. I shut the meeting down, Henry. I'm like, hey, Elon, you need to get your son away from the desk, or you need to mind your son. And end the press conference. That's a business meeting by all measure. And he sat there like the puppet A, punk A, MFer that he is, with a dumb A look on his face. And you 78 million people think that you voted for some strong dude that's going to be forceful. And how many folks ran around and said, oh, Kamala's going to really wither when it comes to the foreign leaders. How's she going to deal with Putin? How's she going to deal with Erdogan and other strong leaders of the world and the military? Remember how I forgot who it was that said, and I know somebody's going to help me with this, that said that the military generals are going to, they were basically saying they're going to run a train on her. No disrespect to anybody, but that's kind of what they were saying. Donald Trump may as well just been bent over the Resolute desk yesterday. I mean, seriously, y'all, did you see what happened? He let that little boy and his father trick him out. And y'all have been around for a minute and know what that phrase means. Donald Trump got pimped out in public for the world to see. And 78 million people couldn't vote for a black woman that has been elected to all 3 branches of government. That's literally what happened live, not Memorex, yesterday, y'all. And any of your maggot family, friends, business associates that you're tippy-toeing around about what Trump's going to do and all that, send them that clip. You all are smart enough to catch that clip. It's all over social media. Send them that. And from all measure, not only did the little boy dress Donald down and give him the what for, he put a booger on his desk. So I'm not saying this to all America. I'm saying this to the 78 million that voted and the ones that stayed at home. Today I am going to say it, but this is what you all voted for. The others, us other 75 plus million that voted for Vice President Harris, we didn't vote for that at all. Donald Trump is the weakest elected official in my lifetime. He's not strong, America. And he sure as hell does not represent what I believe in and what I know that 75 plus million people who voted for Kamala Harris believe in. What you saw in that press conference was the degradation of the most powerful office in the land because he allowed himself to be pimped out so that he wouldn't have to go to jail. It had nothing to do, period, with all those head fake items. It really didn't have anything to do with the economy, broadly speaking. It sure as hell didn't have to do anything with the price of eggs. Look, all this stuff from the folks from our Muslim community who said they weren't going to vote for Donald Trump. They were going to vote for, they weren't going to vote for Kamala Harris. They were voting for Trump, and they weren't going to vote for, they were going to vote for Jill Stein. All that is come back to bite y'all in the behind. Yes, and other groups are seeing it in terms of deportations. But what I saw that made me, all that other stuff didn't really shake my head. Make me shake my head. It really did, because we knew that was the reality. The deportation conversation, that's awful. And we've got people that are in that fight that are been a part of our show. What's happening in Gaza? We told you all that stuff. We said it, but to watch the president of the United States be pimped out like he was on national television. America, 78 million of y'all, there's your strong man. There was no patience. There was no, let's let it happen. This is a child. And no, you shut the meeting down. If you're that much of a badass, you say, look, no, Elon, you need to take it. First, and then this is where I'm going to say, then we'll go to a break. First of all, Henry, who in the heck lets a 4-year-old in a meeting of that importance or press conference of that importance in the first place? You tell Elon, hey, no, you can come in, but somebody tend to your son while we have this press conference. And so there's nothing that anybody on the planet can tell me that will make any sense. Like, well, Rich, come on. None of it. There is not one comment that anybody can make to me. I'm not being stubborn or bullheaded. I'm just saying, unless you are pimped out, that's the only way that happens. So that's the first stage of me getting that out. There'll be more, but we're going to take a break. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So, listen, I know that there's a lot of, commentary out there about what I just said, but I'm pretty unyielding in this space. I get that JFK had his son, but that was his son. Okay, like I said, other presidents have had children in the Oval Office, but not during that type of a meeting of that level of importance. So, no. And it just shows what I've said. And I could repeat it over and over again, and, I probably will in some ways. But no, guys, that's just unacceptable. So what are the measures? You guys know how I try to make sure that if we talk about something, then we try to find out what the solution or the action is going to be around it. So this is that moment where we have to take the action of making sure that we get the House back. Let's start there, and let's go back down to Florida, and let's get those 2 seats in Florida. Let's find the people that didn't show up to vote, and let's find the people who are fed up in the first 3 weeks of this administration, and get them out to vote for the Democratic candidates for the in the 1st and the 6th districts. Okay, that's what we have to do, because I'm fed up with people sitting back and saying, well, there's nothing we can do. There's everything we can do if we just do it. And Florida's a starting place. And then, of course, Stefanik up in New York, so that the House can have the numbers and be in the position to change this by using the powers of impeachment. Listen, it is aspirational. It is a goal. It is an opportunity. It's all the above. We cannot sit back and let this continue to happen. And we have an action. We have a way to act, and that is, let's start with Florida and New York, and take it from there. Dereliction of duty, right there. You're going to let a kid, a 4-year-old, and a non-elected government official run your press conference in. Now, if they had been, I try to be somewhat fair or reasonable. I'm always that way. If they had been someplace else, for example, I could say, okay, it wasn't the Oval Office. But this was the Oval Office, y'all. That's why, as much as I'm ranting about this and frustrated in the sense that it's just like 78 million people, some got hoodwinked, others were willful. I'm not giving people the safety net of they got bamboozled. Some people were willfully wanting to not see a black woman as the president of the United States of America, and that's why they voted for Donald Trump, for no other reason than that. It's that simple. And I'll be calling a lot of people out in the weeks and months and years to come. I will say it straight to their face. I don't care if they're family members, friends, business associates. I don't care. That's what happened. That being said, it's time to make it's time for us to take the action, which would be, let's get him out of office. I understand people are saying, yeah, but then there's J.D. Vance. We got to start somewhere. Don't let that be the reason to not get the House back. Because the House the House will at least have the ability to navigate J.D. Vance's bad behavior. But we have to change that. To have a dude sitting there and having a 4-year-old. He got run over like the offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs. And for Kansas City Chiefs fans that are out there, sorry, I didn't mean to burn your biscuit. But he got run over yesterday just like the Philadelphia Eagles did to the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And y'all know I'm telling the truth. So, just had to say that. Can we grab a couple quick calls, Henry? All right, let's go to Earl in Hyde Park. Earl, good morning and welcome to the show.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. On this cold wintry morning with a lot of snow on the ground.
Yep.
I guess the snowplow people are going to make a little more money this year because it was looking pretty bleak for them.
Yes, it's true.
Well, the reason why I called in, I wanted to expand your position a little bit into the international stage. I thought that Putin has shown out to be punking out Trump, too, with the concessions that he's made for Crimea.
Yeah. And
all the other concessions that he's possibly going to make to belong to this strongman clan or the group, cartel, whatever you want to be, including Putin, Xi, Erdogan, who knows what concessions he's making on the international stage with Putin pulling his strings because of his need to belong to this group of so-called strongmen. I'm afraid not only what's happening with Musk, but I'm also worried about what Putin might be doing to us as far as maybe guiding our international stance on the world market.
Yeah.
And what are the implications for that?
There's no question.
So you point on this morning about what's happening here in America. I just wanted to expand it. That's all. You're doing a wonderful job. Thank
you, sir. I appreciate it as always, Earl. Good to hear your voice, and I'll expand on that in a moment. Earl makes a good point, guys, and the point is, how is this affecting us on an international scale in terms of foreign policy, foreign relationships? And it is. There's no question about it. And here's how it's affecting us. Leaders in other countries are sitting back going, oh, my God. They're sitting back and going, Trump is compromised. Many of the Americans were right, and many of our foreign allies knew that anyhow. They're sitting back and saying, oh, my God. And here's the part that's just mind-boggling, that Trump is truly that kind of interaction in a press conference, in a meeting like that, makes him an even bigger national security risk, kind of to Earl's point. He's a national security risk because of the imagery of that. If nothing else, foreign leaders are saying, oh, we can run right over him. They already got him bent over the desk. We may as well just push him the rest of the way. And I'm not saying this from a position of causing any harm. I'm just saying foreign leaders are looking at it and going, this dude is truly compromised. This dude is truly someone that is a threat to our entire nation, if not the world. So listen, y'all, that's what 78 million folks voted for. It's not a mandate. We know that. It is not a even a leading. What's the word I want to use? A point of conversation. It's a narrow margin. So the upside, if you want to call it that, start with Florida, start with New York. Let's get the House back. Let's start to move this in some sort of a direction that's going to allow people to feel like we can get some things back in order. And I talked a little bit about that earlier throughout this week, and I said, I already warned you guys, I'm going to keep talking about that. We want to be able to be helpful as part of the solution by taking action to help the folks in Florida get out and vote, and the folks in New York to get out and vote so we can take those seats back. That's where we have to be, guys. So, that being said, let's go to a quick break. We've got one of our guests that will be with us shortly. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we will be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. I think that... First of all, thanks to you guys for the text that you're sending this morning. I'll try to get to them and read them on the way. And I know we've got folks on hold this morning because I probably woke some folks up this morning. But that being said, we have one of our guests with us this morning, and I want to take the time to softly introduce him and let him tell you a little bit about an upcoming wonderful project. And with us this morning from WTTW firsthand is co-executive producer Dan Protest. Good morning, Dan, and welcome to Choose Views.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, man. Did I meet you? Did we high five each other, dap each other last Monday at the? I think we did at the event at with the mayor.
That was not me.
That wasn't you?
I didn't see it. We had a high five over the phone a few weeks ago about another project I was working on.
There you go. All right. We'll see. Every now and again, you got to put it out there and see where we are. Man, thanks for being with us this morning. And you guys have been super busy as always. And I'm excited to hear about the initiative and peacekeepers. I mean, you've got a really good project that's happening right now that's coming up next week, and love to have you take a moment and tell us about it. Tell us why it's important as it relates to safety in Chicago, but more broadly, safety in the country.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is firsthand. It's a series we've been working on over the past 7 years, and it's basically the concept of the series is that we look at social issues through the eyes of people who are experiencing them. So we started 7 years ago now with firsthand gun violence, and met 5 people who were experiencing gun violence from various different perspectives, and it was entirely their own perspective. No Mr. Announcer man coming from the outside narrating their story. And we're doing that again this year with peacekeepers. So we're introducing the audience to 5 different people who are keeping the peace in Chicago neighborhoods. And this is very much community-based solutions to violence. So instead of your traditional policing or adjudication, these are people who are living in these communities, community violence intervention workers who are out there every day stopping conflicts when they happen, but also more broadly creating the conditions for peace. So they're just a constant positive presence in the neighborhood. People know they can go to them if they've got an issue. If there is some act of violence, they come out and make sure that there's no retaliation and are constantly, you often hear with these people who do this work, relentless engagement. They're relentlessly engaging with the community. So we've got 3 people doing that work. We've got a woman who's created a peaceful, safe place for neighborhood teens in West Pullman and Roseland. And then we also have a really cool story about a restorative justice court in North Lawndale. Chicago has, Cook County has various problem-solving courts. This is one where for certain low-level offenses, rather than, go before a judge wearing your robe up high on a bench who sentences you to jail or prison time, you have peace circles and look for ways to repair the harm, to make the victim whole, the community whole, and also to restore the offender.
Man, it's a mouthful, but the part that gets to me the most is when you said conditions for peace. Elaborate on that if you can.
Yeah, and I mean, that can have many different faces. So just one small example, our crew was out with one of these peacekeepers. His name is Adrian. He works for the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. He was walking through the neighborhood in Humboldt Park. And yes, there's, one scene where we see him literally, there's an act of violence in the neighborhood and he bolts across the street to try to stop the violence. But often he's just, as I said earlier, kind of positive presence in the neighborhood. He's going through with our camera through Humboldt Park, and he sees there's, people living in tents. There's a serious homelessness problem, particularly in the wake of gentrification in that neighborhood. And he realizes one of the people living in a tent is his dad's friend, and someone he's known his entire life. Guy gets out of the tent, gives him a big hug, and he's like, okay, what can I do for this individual to make sure that he's housed? And in fact, I've heard since then that he has found a home for this guy. But that's, it is more broadly tending to the needs of your community because, we all know violence often follows in the wake of poverty and other systemic issues. And these guys are tending to those underlying issues in a way that the police can't do.
Right.
Police have their time and place when it comes to community safety, but these community violence intervention workers are really tending to some of the more basic needs of their communities.
So in that space, Dan, it sounds very similar, or at least there's some characteristics that remind me of what Mayor Johnson's been talking about as it relates to having more folks on the ground that are peacekeepers, not just peacekeepers, but people who are trained at dealing with some of the psychological and sociological issues that lead to a variety of things, one of them being violence. So it sounds like, there's some partnering thinking in that space with what you guys are doing and what the mayor of the city of Chicago is trying to do and further implement.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've been covering this set of issues for probably a decade now, and I have found that in that time there have been some positive developments and some negative developments. The positive developments are that researchers in particular are recognizing that these interventions work, that they do reduce violence, and there's been a real professionalization of community violence intervention work. I mean, there are people who this is a career. Often people who are in this career are formerly incarcerated themselves or are formerly coming from a gang environment, which makes them, credible messengers in their neighborhoods in a way that the police can never be. The negative development is that, the funding for these kinds of initiatives, even though this is really, I argue, an essential city service. I mean, it's, we don't say like, oh, we had a budget shortfall this year, so no firefighters this year. Sorry, everyone, if your house catches on fire. This is also an essential city service that we should be funding like an essential city service, and it's a good first step that the mayor and the governor are behind these efforts. But, what happens then is there's some financial backing for one of these programs. It blossoms, it develops, and then 3 years from now, 4 years from now, there's a new mayor. That new mayor loses interest, and there goes your program that had become an essential city service in their neighborhood.
So for me, that then says this is where the state's ability to enact some constitutional guidelines should kick in. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but in terms of certain social services and or services that you just described, it's almost like they should be in the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and that's me maybe being a little bit aspirational and lofty, but I think that helps to then eliminate or certainly greatly reduce the next administration going, well, we don't really care about that. But here's the thing. Here's the contradiction, Dan, and you know this. Running on fixing violence, right? Running on all these things that are meant to be, these hot button items, but then not actually doing the thing or keeping the things that were in place with a prior administration. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, on paper at least, believe in fixing violence. It's just that there are many different concepts of how we go about doing that. There is a process for fixing violence that we as a society have tried decade after decade that has been less successful, which is, and I mean, there's a time and a place for it, but someone commits a crime, you track them down, you put handcuffs on them and lock them up. So that's certainly addressing crime. It's not necessarily addressing the underlying causes of the crime. As far as amending the Constitution, that is lofty. Great idea. I think where, in the absence of that, this is really a mind shift, and it's a cultural shift where we begin to rethink community safety. And I'm trying to do this with this series, we reframe this as an essential city service. I mean, I don't know to what extent. I haven't examined all the statutes on the books in Springfield. I don't know that there is, to what extent firefighting is codified in the state's constitution or in the state's criminal code or policing. But there is just a cultural mindset that policing and firefighting are essential. And so I think to start to think of peacekeeping, this kind of peacekeeping, as essential is also an important step forward in the absence of changing the state's constitution.
Yeah, everything is, you're right, and I appreciate you saying that. And again, I recognize fully that it's lofty. However, it's it becomes, well, to your point, it's mindset. And I want to circle back to something that you said earlier about community. And that's one of the things and why what Jamal Cole is doing is so important with My Block, My Hood, My City, as it relates to it starts right there, left and right when you walk out of your front door. And changing things on that very, very basic granular level allows us to take control and feel like our work is being has become effective. So, yes, I appreciate what you said earlier about it's about community and about rethinking what community can look like and can get done. Tell us a little bit. This is I wrote a note down. We talk about violence and peacekeeping and then violence and this larger conversation about how it's fixed. What you describe sounds like it's focusing on some of the violence that we might label as gang-driven violence or street violence, if you will. How is the peacekeeper and a project and work touching domestic violence?
That's a good question. I mean, people who do this work are there to tend to many of the community's basic needs. And I don't know to what extent, and their training is extensive. And I should say, I mean, there are people who are doing good work in communities who have not been deputized, quote unquote, as community violence intervention workers and who aren't being paid for it. I woke up this morning and saw that my sidewalk had been shoveled, not by me, but by a neighbor. I mean, there are people always out there doing good work. These are peacekeepers who have extensive training in this work to deal with a range of social issues. I mean, including they've got participants who are looking for housing. They know how to link them up with housing or other basic services. I would be willing to bet, and I can't tell you for certain, that they have received training for domestic violence, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that popped into my mind about just the conversation of violence and violence of all kinds. How are you guys navigating what I always like to know is, pushback from any individuals or groups when it comes to the work that you're doing? You're going out, you've got, folks on the street talking to people. Are you getting any kind of pushback or anything of that nature?
I mean, for the most part, not while we were filming these stories, because we are accompanying the people who are widely respected in their communities. In the wake of the series, it will launch this upcoming Monday at WTTW.com/firsthand. And we'll see. I mean, there was the defund the police movement from a few years ago, and I think we need to recognize the extent to which that was a rhetorical tool that was kind of a means to an end. The ends being, let's look at alternative ways of making our communities safer and more peaceful. It most certainly raises questions about whether people literally meant defund the police. So I'm hopeful that people are not going to take our series to mean that we're saying that policing doesn't work or has absolutely no place in our society. It does. I mean, I guess that's me talking to a certain extent. But so sure, will we receive some of that pushback? Quite possibly. What we're saying is that there is another way. There's really strong evidence to show that it's working, and it deserves to be viewed as essential to making our city work.
One of the things that, and I appreciate you being willing to touch the third rail in that space, and I'll follow right along with you to the gates of hell. But no, Dan, listen, here's the thing on defunding the police that people, lost their minds over, and we all know it, but sometimes people just need to say it and be unwilling to hear any garbage. And that was used to say we had some problems that were highlighted during COVID, particularly with the murder of George Floyd, others that were highlighted, and the police weren't doing their job in those spaces. And so that you and I both know that, and that's sometimes when you just want to reach out and grab somebody and say, "Wake up!" We're not saying that police need to go away and take all their money away. Neither will we say that about firefighters. I mean, we yesterday were blessed to have CFD and CPD show up here at the studio because we had alarms going off. Why in the heck would somebody in their right mind go, "Well, we don't want the police or the fire department to be funded"? Because we all need them, and that's why I thank them on the air. We want, like any entity that's a service that we pay for, to be more efficient, do better, blah, blah, blah. So I sometimes I just have to, and I know you get this too, where you just want to sort of put that conversation to rest. We're not saying to take away, the funding for the police department. We want them to be better. That's all. So the problem is that fund community violence intervention work doesn't make a good bumper sticker. And so I think Come on, Dan. It does. I'm just kidding, man. But you're right. It doesn't. And something that's quick that comes out of people's mouths is oftentimes the lazy way to get the message across. But let me ask you something else that you kind of touched on in terms of what you're seeing. What would you say the biggest thing that you have witnessed or are learning in putting together work like a combination of Firsthand and Peacekeepers? What is it that's like your wow aha moment or moments that you've had?
I mean, I feel like I have an aha moment every day with projects like this. There is a tendency to feel like the violence in our communities is intractable. I will say that I should circle back to the restorative justice court. That was an absolute wow moment. I was the last time I spoke with you, but you may not remember this. I was talking with you about a project about a man who'd been incarcerated for many years, and it was a challenging story to tell. It was a little bit depressing, and this story about this restorative justice court was a palate cleanser for me personally, seeing that there is another way. These are many, I think the vast majority of the people who are sent to this court are low-level gun offenders. Now, at first you hear like gun offenders are going to an alternative touchy-feely court. But keep in mind that people who are possessing a gun but don't have all of the proper paperwork in place, they can potentially be locked up for that, for not having their FOID card or their concealed carry card. What this court is saying is we realize you're living in a dangerous neighborhood, and that's why you're carrying a gun. What can we do to get your house in order, to get your paperwork in order, and to meet regularly about that gun you're carrying, why you're carrying it, and how you can carry it safely? This is by no means encouraging people to carry guns. I'm certainly not a gun advocate myself. It's just saying, like, these people are carrying guns anyway. How can we make sure that they're locking it up at night, that they're not reacting out of anger and turning to their gun? And the recidivism statistics could not be more compelling about the extent to which this reduces second-time gun offenses. When you look at it compared to people who go to traditional courts, the recidivism drops off a cliff. I think it's something like a 3% recidivism rate within 1 year. That is committing a second crime involving a gun. And again, by crime, I'm saying just having a gun without paperwork.
Yeah, that is such an important part of our entire system of fixing some of the problems when it comes to violence or crimes in general. It's the other side of what do we do on the other side of this? And I do remember when we talked before because we were talking about Ronnie. I can't think of his name. And In Their Hands. And so yes, absolutely, I remember that. And what a powerful thing for you to have been a part of. And I know that when you said that those things get you really like, those wow moments. I understand what you're saying, and that's something obviously for you to be super proud of. Talk about go ahead. I'm sorry.
I should say, keep in mind we tend to throw out the word recidivism and not really think about what that word means. Recidivism means you've created a new victim. Basically, we as a society, if we are allowing people to recidivate or are not intervening, they are creating a new victim. And so the question is, what does the data tell us? It's so easy to be driven by emotion and to say, like, well, the best solution to gun violence is to lock up everyone who's possessing a gun. But we've got a program that is working in these restorative justice courts, and I know it sounds touchy. Restorative justice, it sounds touchy-feely. It's just, even in my explaining the recidivism data, just requires way too many words and qualifiers and asterisks. But it's what the data is telling us works. And I worry that way too often we tend to go with our guts and what seems like it would work rather than what's actually working.
Well, and let's be honest, Dan, the work that you do in highlighting this, like you did with Ronnie Carrasquillo, and that within In Their Hands, and now Firsthand, and now Peacekeepers. Honestly, that's part of the process. Putting it out there so that folks know how things are working or not working as well as they can in our justice system and in our social systems that manage some of these conditions. And I love your phrase, conditions for peace. That's something that we have to highlight again when we talk in the future. Let everybody know as we wrap up, Dan. Let everybody know about next week and the initiative and the ability to view this on WTTW.
Yeah, so you can watch all 5 documentaries online at WTTW.com/firsthand starting this upcoming Monday. And eventually those stories will also go to YouTube, which is a great way for people to find the work. And it's not just those 5 documentaries, which are just really, I know I've been talking about data, but at the heart of this are really compelling human stories of 5 peacekeepers. So you can watch them starting next Monday. There's also these firsthand talks, which are kind of like expert TED Talks of people who have solutions to the broader set of issues raised by the Peacekeepers series. There's text journalism, there's news, and all of it is at WTTW.com/firsthand.
That's exciting, and it's always good to have you with us, and your work is just, it's awesome stuff, man, and people need to pay attention to the work that you're doing, and also as a way forward in terms of dealing with violence, or at least dealing with the impacts of violence in our community. So Dan Protest, co-executive producer, WTTW's Firsthand Initiative. Peacekeepers, guys, the docuseries, I should say. You want to check it out next Monday. That's right. Is that the 17th? Yeah.
Yep.
Make sure to check it out. Make sure to give Dan many thumbs up and enjoy his work, and make sure you're sharing it with others that are out there. So, Dan, thanks for being with us this morning, and stay warm, stay safe if you're going to be out and about on these snowy streets of Chicago.
Thanks. You too.
All right, man. Be well. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye now. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? There's a lot that I can say, and with this coming up on a break, we'll have to keep it quick. But the series are really important because it's a way for any of us to take the time and slow down and watch something that explains, in many ways, not only the problem, but how we have gotten to the problem or the issue. And then, as I always try to say, what's our way forward? How do we then come up with plans to fix some of the issues that are in our society? And it starts with what we see right in our community. And I appreciate Dan being on with us and talking about that. Peacekeepers, WTTW. We can hold on a little bit. No, let's go ahead and take the break now. Give ourselves a little bit of extra time. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820 AM, where facts matter. Take it away, Richard.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Great to have our guest, Dan Protest, on with us from WTTW's Firsthand and Peacekeepers. Check it out. Good segments there, good pieces for you guys to further inform where you are. Hey, Henry, I got called out by someone that sent a text that said, "How dare you use uppity Negro?" And I have to laugh at that because in context and with the content that I was delivering, I was talking about how Republicans, GOP, and maggots were unwilling to vote for someone, and they use that as their reference point. And so this person said that, how dare I, during Black History Month, use that phrase. And I was dissing Republicans, FYI. I mean, I wasn't dissing anybody of color, anybody black, anybody of any of the groups that I listed as to why they really weren't voting for Vice President Harris. So sometimes you got to press pause and go, do I need to do I have such angst that I need to find a way to complain about something? Because I wasn't, I was referencing what people have said and their rationale. But, you guys keep tripping on down the road. And it's what I said. Sometimes people send stuff that, we gotta talk about. But in any event, there you go. All right. We'll keep it moving on. Welcome back to Choose Views, and appreciate you guys being with us this morning. As always, make your way over to heartlandsignal.com, our digital platform. Articles and posts that you can check out, reports on all things that the menace, the Orange Menace is doing. And most definitely our Heartland Signal on X, audio and video clips that we have there. Very informative from everything from Trump talking about his problems with what's going on in the Middle East and how he's going to completely fumble that, to our leaders on the Democratic Party that are pushing back against the Republicans, i.e. Jasmine Crockett throwing shade at Doge, Committee Chair Marjorie Taylor Greene, which was epic once again. So lots of good stuff there, guys. Make your way over to heartlandsignal.com and check out our articles and posts that we have each and every day. So, all right. We have with us another one of those smart people that's leaning into the topics that we talk about. And who might that be? Dr. Nathan Shrader, who is the New England College and has been working and doing and keeping folks, plugged into all things civic and civic engagement. Nathan, Doc, welcome to the show. Welcome back. The last time we had you on, we had some tech issues.
That's right. And I told my father, who called me after that, to say, how'd the show go? And I said, I think Elon Musk was tampering with the with our signal. That's who I sort of pinned that on. It was just nothing we could control. It was the Doge committee.
Yeah,
it worked.
Sitting there going, what's Richard Chu and Dr. Nathan Shrader doing? Let's mess with them this morning. So, oh man, but how are you doing? And first of all, before you answer that, welcome back to Choose Views. Glad to have you back with us, and looking forward to having you kind of on a semi-regular basis because of what you bring. Not only to your students and to the university, to the college, but also sort of the broader work that you're doing when it comes to civic engagement. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and I will be here anytime you want me. I will be available. And I want to tell you something that I was not aware of till I taught a class last night. There's a new course I'm teaching called Controversies in American Politics. And as you can guess, we're almost out of material, and we're only a quarter of the way through the semester because there's not enough to cover. But one of my students informed me last night that this is National Hero Week.
Really?
And why am I bringing that up? Well, there's a specific reason I'm bringing that up. Right now, today, here where I live in New Hampshire, the Republican-controlled legislature is bringing forward a right-to-work bill. Which would this bill would essentially it doesn't do everything the traditional right to work bill does, but it would force the labor unions at their own cost to represent members who are now then allowed to be non-union members at the expense of the members in the union, which is utterly insane. And so today, even though we've got a big snowstorm forming here, there's a group mobilizing to be at the State House today. And our AFL-CIO president had a column in the paper here in town this morning. Newspapers are still a big deal here in New Hampshire politics because it's so localized. But but on National Hero Week, it made me think about those union members who are out there trying to block this sort of awful legislation that would undermine their own families and the families of workers everywhere. So I just wanted to bring that up to lead off.
Well, thank you for that, because it leads to a question that I want to ask you about what are New Hampshire voters, consumers, citizens saying? What are you hearing through your students, and then up the ladder of their parents and other folks in the community? What are they saying right now about what this new administration is doing?
Well, so I think there's a lot of consternation over this, but I also believe because Donald Trump did better in the 2024 election in this, he didn't win New Hampshire, but he did better here than he had in the previous two outings. And I've talked to some people who describe themselves kind of these moderate Republicans, because there still are some legitimate moderate Republicans left in New Hampshire. They're maybe not in every state, but there's still some left here. And I think they're having a little buyer's remorse. And the other thing is that we've got here such a unique the way people look at these elections here. It's a unique way that they look kind of bottom up, not top down. So our local elections in the last cycle, the Democrats won the federal races, both congressional seats, the presidential election, but the Republicans built up significant majorities in the state House of Representatives and maintained their majority in the state Senate. So we've got a lot of voters here who they are not immune from ticket splitting, right? Which in other parts of the country that have become extremely polarized, ticket splitting has kind of gone the way of the way of the dodo, right? It's just there are places now where you would never. It might have been happening in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, where it's not happening now. It's still happening here. So voters around here, from what the 3 years I've lived here, I've noticed that voters are sophisticated about being able to understand, well, the federal government is responsible for this. The state government is responsible for this, and my town or city government is responsible for that. So, for example, the mayor of Manchester is sort of a moderate Republican, the largest city in the state where I live, and he did not actively campaign with Trump and has never really identified with Trump, and he's likely to coast to re-election this year as a Republican mayor in a blue city. So, but then there are, pressures, I think, being put on the Republicans in the state to Republican elected officials. Every time Trump does or says something outrageous or proposes something that is going to cost the state money or jobs, they're the ones on the hook for, like, do you still support this? How do you explain this? Is this something you actually favor? And it's really putting the state Republicans here, in my view, on the spot. Are you going to defend some of these outrageous things? And so far, it seems like the state Republican Party has, but I don't know how long they can sustain that here.
So they have been supporting it. Is that what you're saying? As
the party structure itself, but I think there are still some individual elected Republicans here who have not, or who never have been associated with him and his movement, and they're the ones who I think who are going to they're going to reap the benefits of that in the coming the round of local and town elections we've got this year.
Got it. Okay, so here's another thing that's as it relates to voting and conversations that kind of your students brought to you, and this is something that my wife mentioned to me earlier in this week, and that's this conversation around the SAVE Act, and it's kind of flying under the radar with the distractions. Look over here, look over here. Talk to us about the SAVE Act and the impact that can have on future elections.
No, and I like the way you put that. It has flown under the radars of many of us, including myself. And I consider myself someone who's very attentive to voting rights legislation. And this thing is really not. I remember this being proposed a couple of years ago, and not getting very far in Congress. But there seems to be with the Republican majority right now, the building of reintroducing this SAVE Act, which is, of course, an outrageous name meant to imply saving the United States from election fraud and fictitious election results and people voting in elections who they don't think should be voting in elections. But long story short, this bill would supersede existing state laws on voter registration requirements, because as your listeners are politically astute and probably well aware of this, but states can impose, like the state I live in, we don't have, because many of our towns are very small towns, and if you're registering to vote for the first time, you go to your town hall and you fill out a piece of paper and hand it in. And that's not been controversial historically here. But we're a state with tiny little towns where that's not uncommon and is part of the tradition of the state. But what this law would do is undermine existing state laws by saying that all Americans have to provide a passport, a birth certificate, and a couple of other choices on like a menu of citizenship documents, not just when they first register to vote, but every time they register or re-register. So if I move from Manchester, where I live here, if I move down 20 miles away to Concord, I have to re-register. I would have to show up in person at my town hall with my birth certificate or my passport, and how many of us have moved at some point in our lives where we have to re-register, of course, and we're used to doing that, but not presenting all this proof of documentation. And the estimate from the Brennan Center for Justice is that as of now, there are 21 million Americans who don't have something like a birth certificate, an original birth certificate or a passport readily available. Now, I have been, in the last few days now that I've been kind of studying this act, it was, like I said, off of my radar too. I've been focusing more on two bills we have here in the New Hampshire legislature that would actually remove student IDs as a valid form of voter ID for college students. And the other thing that there's a second bill that would also bar someone a student from claiming domicile here so they could vote here in the state while they're in college unless they are a legal dependent of somebody in the state. So what I'm seeing is this 1-2 punch strategy, right? The Republicans are going, they've got the nationally the SAVE Act married together with some of these bills like I'm seeing in our state capitol here, or state house here, that are intended to outright suppress, let's call it what it is, voter suppression, to outright suppress the vote. And one of the ironies of this is the state senator who is sponsoring the student ID bill to remove student IDs as an acceptable form of identification for college students in the state of the polls, won a very, very close election by a sliver of the vote in the last race. So there's also, to me, this strategic element of, hey, if I can drive down the voter turnout just a little in my district, I won't have a tight election the next time. That's one of the ways I'm reading this. That's not what she has said publicly, but that's sort of what I believe one of the strategic elements happens to be.
So I have this, a little bit of sarcasm and punch to this. We have a bunch of weak A people in the country that if the only way you can participate in the process is to damage the process, that's just such a weak A way of being. They want to create enough additional hurdles and roadblocks for one purpose and one purpose only, Doc. It's based on racism. It's based on sexism. It's based on nationalism. I say one thing, but that's my three-legged stool. It's based on those three things, nothing else.
I think I believe that is absolutely true. History has proven that over and over.
And a little bit of ageism in there too. Racism, sexism, nationalism, and ageism. Let's think about it. College students, certain age, they're going to be impacted by this. Somebody that's older, that's moved a couple times in their lives, and they don't have some of that documentation necessarily readily available. I mean, they're 78 years old. They've been voting longer than some of these knuckleheads who are trying to come up with this legislation have actually been alive. And yet they want to prevent those groups from having a say in how our country goes forward. It's a bunch of weak A people. I mean, really mediocre folks coming up with harmful, and you said it best, suppression. Greg Pallas is one of our contributors and guests on the show, and he talks about that. He's done 2 recent documentaries talking about that, and he's someone that you guys should be aware of.
Oh, I'm going to check him out.
Greg Pallas is really, he's the truth when it comes to this conversation around voter suppression, and not just in the ways that that are sort of the headline highlight ones, but the subversive ones, the ones that are quiet, like you just said, that are kind of under the radar. Add some flavor to this piece when it comes to the married name piece.
Oh, right.
When it comes to the SAVE Act.
Yeah. Look, again, this is as I started reading through the various provisions of this, I'm like, they have managed to work in just under the guise of protecting the integrity of elections and making sure our elections don't have non-citizens voting and all these other kind of boogeyman tactics. Voters who change their names, from the analyses I've been reading, it doesn't have a provision right now. I mean, it can be amended, of course, that would allow a married woman who changes her name, but that name no longer matches with what's on her original birth certificate. There doesn't seem to be a mechanism right now that would allow them to easily register without producing other multiple forms of in-person identification. And I think this is the part I should have mentioned earlier and I didn't. This would basically, if the SAVE Act is passed, and I have no reason to doubt that Donald Trump or his co-president Elon Musk would support this. I no doubt they would. This would basically eliminate mail-in registration. It would essentially eliminate same-day registration that states like New Hampshire has, right, where you can do this on the same day because you would have to be you'd have to have all this documentation with you in advance. And if you're a married woman, your name changes, but that your married name, if you adopt that name, doesn't match your original birth certificate, then that document is not valid for that purpose. You have to have other supporting documentation. And it may very well be possible for many voters to come across that or have that documentation, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy for all. And the idea is, I think, in our democracy, the idea is that we have the right to vote or to choose not to vote, right? Sometimes as much as I would encourage people to vote, we still have a right to abstain from voting. But that doesn't mean we ought to be erecting any of these superficial roadblocks to at least letting people register and then letting them choose if they want to vote or not. But the first element of this is, of course, limit the voting pool by removing as many people from that pool who you may believe strategically to be against your party.
Yeah.
And there's one other piece to this. I think there's this false assumption, too, because like these bills making it harder for college students to register or to vote. They're also making this assumption that every college student in America leans in one direction, and I know that is certainly not true.
Yeah.
So they're not just disenfranchising the college student who votes on the Democratic side; they're disenfranchising the college student who votes on the Republican side too. To me, it makes assumptions that should not be made by an intelligent person.
Well, and that's the key right there. Assumptions that should not be made by an intelligent person. I'm going to throw some major shade in a second, but I have to come back to a point you just because you know where I'm going. I got to come back to something that you mentioned in that process about the numbers of voters that are college age voters and use their college ID to vote. Listen, to your point, not everybody that's on a college campus, and you know because you're right there in the cauldron, is necessarily going to vote one way or the other. So they are cutting off the potential future of their party's voting mechanism by saying, unless you're all these things that we just lined out in this new legislation, you can't vote. It just goes to show a couple of things, Doc. One, desperation, a lot of stupidity, frankly, because and then the other part, which is the craven part, they only want, let's go back history lesson, white male property owners to vote in America, because it's also going to cut off women who were married. Because let's be honest, if we look at some maybe stereotypical means of not communication, but means of how our society goes forward, there are a lot of women on the Republican side that get married that do what? They change their name, just like women that are Democrats. Yes. They change their name. So it is conceptually crazy a way, if you believe that their goal is to purify the voting blocks. It's actually not about that. It's saying we only want, straight white men that are property owners, sound familiar, history, to be voting in America. I mean, tell me I'm crazy, Doc.
Oh no, look, I don't think you're crazy, and I think we've seen this repeated so many times that it's like the Peanuts cartoon with Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football keeps getting pulled out from under. Like, we go through the same. It's the same thing over and over again, and we have to re-educate people over and over again about why this has been done before, but why, right? And people, unfortunately, many voters seem to have very short memories on oh wait, the United States has really only been a functional democracy since the late 1960s, and they forget that part. And there have been continuous efforts by the kind of the reactionary side to chip away at that. And there's two political scientists that I'm reading one of their new book now, Paul Pearson and Eric Schickler. They're talking about it. They're saying how from on the right side of the spectrum in the United States, they're chipping away trying to make sure that the 1960s never happened. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a pretty effective way of putting it, right? Because so many of the rights recognized by the federal government and upheld by the courts in that time period attempted to make the United States a more call it more accurately a democracy than it had prior to that.
Yeah,
and they don't like that. They never did.
Well, and this is for another conversation when we have you back in a few weeks, and that's the age group of the people that are making the most hell right now. Does fit in a certain narrative about what they saw their fathers and uncles get in terms of white privilege that they weren't afforded themselves. And that's another conversation that you and I'll have. But I want to,
yes, definitely.
You know what I mean? So I want to come back to something that's been on my mind. And I often talk about, okay, we can be upset about these things. We know they're in front of us, but we've got to take some action. And so as much as I'm going to put out what's out there and talk about it, we have to make sure that Americans don't become desensitized to, as you put it, the tidal wave of misinformation and distraction. What are your thoughts there?
Well, so what I have been telling people since the election in November, and everybody, of course, had this couple days or weeks right after where I think people were so fatigued by what happened, the whole process, and just needed a little time to regroup. You don't have to feel as if you are fighting the battles alone, right? And so America, going back to a previous generation, we were always kind of the country of joiners, right? We join organizations and we join groups in our community, and some of that has fallen by the wayside in previous decades. But I think this is a time where the best thing that concerned people, those who are worried about our future, who are worried about what they're seeing in our country and around the world, you don't have to take on, say, the MAGA establishment in Washington by yourself. There are millions of other people that also want to do that. But sometimes that activity, those actions start in your own neighborhood, in your precinct, in your ward, on your block, right? That the way to organize and the way to move forward doesn't have to be just marching on Washington when there's an anti-Trump protest. That's important, but that's only a piece of it. There has to be the local component, because that's where that's where the people are. That's where your neighbors are. And I would tell people, if you want to be the most effective you can be right now with what's happening around us, don't look to DC, look down your street. What can you do in your neighborhood? Join your if you want to do this, your party's committee in your town or city, and work at the ward or precinct level. Join Americans for Democratic Action or the ACLU, or a group that has a local chapter or something that you can work with people face to face, not just on social media. That's my advice right now, and because I think when we get it back to the local organizing component, that's what the Republicans have been doing for years, and they've been good at it. And the Democrats kind of look more towards D.C. these days, and it's getting it back to the local organizing that's face to face, and that lets people realize I'm not alone out there. There are other people that think like me, and they exist outside of Facebook and Instagram.
They're right down the street. They're the people that
they're right down the street
that I don't acknowledge necessarily because I don't know. And there's a gentleman here in Chicago that has an organization that's called My Block, My City. I'm sorry, My Block, My Hood, My City. And his name is Jamal Cole, and he speaks to that in large volumes about the importance of right there when you walk out the front door, left and right, are some of the people and resources to help in that work. And I I applaud him in that space. We've had him on as a show on the guest. We're going to have him.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great dude, and the work that he's doing is right. It's right in your face, right locally, right there. So I appreciate what you said in that space, Dr. Shrader. It's great having you with us and having a clear call so that people can hear your message and hear your thought processes and the things that you're recommending in terms of being able to take action. And we're going to do this on a regular basis because what you have to say and your work is too doggone important for people not to know about and not to hear. So thank you for being with us again this morning.
Well, and I'm so glad we got to have this conversation, and I'll be back anytime.
Absolutely, guys. Associate Professor of Politics, Chair of the Department of Politics at New England College, Dr. Nathan, who I refer to affectionately as Doc Shrader. Thanks for being with us this morning.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Be well. So, guys, listen. Look Dr. Shrader up. Last name is spelled Shrader. Dr. Nathan Shrader, New England College. You want to check him out. His writings, his work is strong, and he's a voice that, you know, like he said, we want to be. I'm saying this about his voice. He's a voice that you want to follow and be a part of, and in that space, you want to be able to take action, like he talked about. Let's take a quick break. Henry, thank you for being patient with me. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. We're going to grab your calls in a minute. However, live, local, and progressive, of course, Joan Esposito will be talking Chicago Tribune Environment and Public Health investigative reporter Michael Hawthorne. That was a lot. Michael Hawthorne on Joan's show. Carolyn Shapiro, co-director on the Institute of the Supreme Court of the United States at IIT's Chicago-Kent College of Law. Filmmaker and investigative journalist Greg Pallas, who we mentioned earlier, and Dr. Greta Euling, a cultural anthropologist and author of Decolonizing Ukraine, the Indigenous People of Crimea, and Pathways to Freedom. Live, local, and progressive. Joan Esposito here on WCPT, Heartland Signal, and tune in 2 to 5 p.m. And then from 5 to 7 tonight, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Amy Steele, co-founder and CEO of the New North Carolina Project. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, 5 to 7 Central, WCPT, AM 820, Heartland Signal. Tune in, YouTube and Facebook. Check us out there. And, of course, as always, my featured interviews, you can find recent conversations that I've had and both the short and long versions by going over to our heartlandsignal.com platform and clicking on my picture. There's lots of good stuff there that you can share. And if you're listening live, just say, Alexa, go there. Do that thing. All right? If you haven't already. All right, guys. What a morning. Smart people being with us. We appreciate that. Dan Protest, of course, and Dr. Nathan Shrader. And I love his voice. I love what he has to say in this space that we're in. So the Dems are trying to show up, guys. They are trying to show up. And what I mean by that is I've talked about Florida. I've talked about New York and those 3 congressional seats. The Dems are trying to show up, and they're doing it in terms of winning special elections. That's happening. We do not have to yield any more than we may have. And our opportunity is to get some of those voters who did not vote out in the special elections. There's a winning opportunity there. There just is. Made a promise, so let's keep it. Let's grab a couple of quick calls. Let's go to Andy in Rockford. Andy, thanks for holding, man. When we have back-to-back guests like that, I know, it's tough to get you in, but I wanted to get you in this last part of the show.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. Last night I walked into the house and the better half had MSNBC on.
Okay.
Ari Melder was talking to Republican spokesperson that the question came up from Ari about tariffs. And the answer that she gave was how wonderful they were and how well the farmers and everybody did back in 2017 when they levied tariffs against China. And I got livid. I started screaming like I was insane or something. To ask the question, you would think that somebody of Ari's caliber would do some research into it. The 2017 tariffs that he imposed on China bought their grain from South America, from Brazil, Venezuela, so on and so on. The farmers did well to the tune of subsidies that Ari should have already researched. Between Illinois, Iowa, and Kansas, $19 billion of taxpayer money went to those farmers because of those tariffs imposed on China. I was telling Henry, it just seems bizarre to me that he would ask a question that he had no response for. He just let her make the point that, we did wonderful. And the farmers were just ecstatic about, how well they did under Trump. Because he had no comeback.
Rather than position the question like this. And first of all, Andy, thank you for that contribution and that clarity. And take this the right way. Andy, respectfully, you sound like a regular dude that's out there working, doing your thing, and have been for decades. And you knew you knew this. You were plugged in and aware of this.
I looked it up. I researched it. When started talking about tariffs back in September, October, whatever it was, how we're going to pay for the betterment of this country through tariffs on other nations. I did some investigation. I'm a stupid truck driver that has a GED, a veteran that has twin daughters buried in the National Cemetery of the Pacific in Hawaii. I've done my part for this country. I think I have a whole lot more to do, and I'm 72.
That's
to
right.
clarify what is going on in this country. And anybody and everybody that will listen.
Well, listen, man, your voice, I can. Here's what I love about this call with you. Your passion at 72 says that this game isn't over yet. And I appreciate you more than you can imagine to help people be reawakened about what they still can do. They don't have to just, fold up their tent and go home. And I truly appreciate that, Andy. But I also appreciate your accuracy. And the question should have been phrased from the opposite, which is to that guest. He should have said, so I want you to explain to me how the $19 billion that came from subsidies has anything to do with the tariffs.
Yes, sir.
See,
yes, sir.
That's how I would have put it. I would have said, help me understand which one is real and which one is fiction. And one of the things that I just have the biggest frustration for with people who, to your point, you have given us the impression that they're good at this. I mean, how could you not approach it from that standpoint? The information's right there, and it's not like they don't have a legion of researchers. He could have done it himself. He's an attorney. Come on.
If you're going to ask the question, then know the answer.
Yeah.
Right?
Or put people on notice that don't come in here with that garbage.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Andy, thank you, man. And I hope you call us back because I love your passion. I love your energy and everything we can do to keep that going. I'm going to be here for you to make that happen. Okay?
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Have a great day.
I will. You too. Be safe out there because we got our Chicago region and northern Illinois snow. So be safe in your travels. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm over here just south of Hammond, and of course Indiana is one of those red states that don't have a snowplow, and the roads are junk. The roads are junk. I'm on my way to Bedford Park. I came down out of Sharon, Wisconsin, about midnight last night. And when you got to Illinois, the roads were wet and pretty.
Yeah.
Wet, but pretty,
I know.
That's slick.
All right, Andy, be safe out there, and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, sir.
All right, bye now. See, I love me some Andy. Andy's my kind of guy. He's my kind of guy, y'all. He just is. He He's grizzled and been around a minute, Henry. He knows his stuff, and he's not willing to be pushed around. He's willing to stand up and fight. That's the kind of guy that, not guy specifically, but that's the personality that we have to have, y'all. Male, female, black, white, Hispanic, Latino, Muslim, whatever, all of us in my rainbow of coalitions of folk, our LGBTQ, everybody. That's the kind of energy we have to take to this fight. I'm serious. That's the kind of energy. And he said it himself. And I would respectfully disagree with him. He is just not, he kind of denigrates the wrong word. He kind of played himself down. No, Andy, you're more than just that. You are all of that in a bag of chips. And that's who we have to be, y'all. If this 72-year-old man can be out there still swinging for the fences, then doggone it, we can too. I just feel passionate about that. I don't want anybody to be, to not show up because you feel like you got to fold up your tent. And listen, I get it. This fight, it's a tough fight. It is. There's no question about that. Do not get me wrong. But take some energy from Andy. And Andy, if you're still listening, man, I applaud you and praise you for bringing that energy and that passion to the conversation. You guys can do the same thing, and make sure that you just say to yourselves, how much do I want it? Okay, and so I'll leave it there because we're going to take a quick break and then try to grab 2 more calls before we wrap up. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Thanks for being with us this morning, and I really appreciate that call. So we just, he brought the message. All right, let's tomorrow, just to let you guys know, in studio we'll have our great friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics podcast, and from the good old town of Woodstock, we'll have Natalie Ziemba with us to talk about what's happening up there in the political land that she's a part of as one of the city council folks there, and just a strong citizen, someone that's doing the work in so many different venues. They will both be with us in studio tomorrow, and then one of our call-in guests will be Sherman Dilla Thomas. He is the new brand ambassador and social media chief at the DuSable Museum. So he's going to be great to chat with tomorrow. I had a chance to meet him briefly at the convention. Cool dude. All right, let's grab a couple quick calls as we wrap up. Let's go to Victor real quickly from the northwest side of the United States of America.
Richard Chu, how do you do? It's snowing here.
It's snowing there too? Yeah, I heard you guys.
Yeah, we got snow, baby.
Yeah, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good, I'm fine, and you sound great as ever.
Thank you.
You have a golden voice there, young man.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate what Andy said and kind of expand on it real quickly. There was over $100 billion in subsidies that the taxpayers had to pay, and nearly 1,000 small farmers and businesses went bankrupt during the Trump tariffs against China. And furthermore, Ari Melber is in the pocket of the Republicans because he knows all this information. Everything was scripted, and his non-response was also scripted. It just allowed a Republican troll to say how great tariffs are. They all know what's going on.
Yeah.
And, Elon Musk has turned Donald Trump into a weak, cowardly, and imp president. And no one's going to listen to him anymore. If he goes to a world leader, like even Putin, they're going to ask him, hey, are you sure you got this approved by Elon Musk? That's right. The way it is.
That's right, Victor. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, and thank you for bringing that back.
Exactly.
About the national security risk. I mean, that was an example of the biggest national security risk is how he sat there and just like it was like he was catatonic, frankly.
Exactly. Elon Musk, I know Elon Musk shows up in his underwear with his 4-year-old boy during a press conference, and Donald Trump looked like a bad stepchild or something,
Oh, man. Good point. Victor, thank you for the call today. I'm going to try to grab one more call before we wrap up. Be safe today with the weather out there.
Good news from Chew.
Thanks, Victor. All right, let's go to Steve real quickly in Des Plaines. Des Plaines. Hey, Dave. Steve, how are you?
Hey, Mr. Hay. Listen, in the same spirit of the calls this morning, you're talking to the other gentleman, that we have to reiterate, we are in a knife fight. We're in a street fight here. Yeah. Okay, we're in a street fight. The gloves are off, bare knuckles, iron knuckles, the whole bit. If you wanna hold on to this thing, and I've got a suggestion. I'm going to start putting it out there. We need an anthem, and I would suggest as an anthem. I don't know if you remember. I might be aging myself here, but the Creedence Clearwater Revival song "Fortunate Son."
Yep.
Listen to the words and the subtext of that song. Some of the videos is "It Ain't Me," and it ain't me.
It ain't me.
And if you notice in that song, they talk about paying taxes and stuff like that. And I tell you what, that song captures the spirit of the day. So that's a suggestion. We need an anthem. And anyway, rock and roll. We're in a street fight. We're in a street fight. So,
well, Steve, first of all, thanks as always for your contribution. And yes, I'm a musical. I'm not going to say I'm a musical historian. I won't. That's not accurate. I love the history of music and its import in our lives and its connective tissue because of the written word that goes into the lyrics of vocals and the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And then there's lyricism in instrumental music as well. However, when you slow down sometimes and listen to the things that are in some of the songs, whether it be R&B, rock and roll, hip hop, rap, jazz, everything, there's some messaging there that people sometimes miss.
That's right.
And that's okay.
Yes.
I mean, we love the beat and all that. And rather than but, Fortunate Son, without a doubt is, and specifically, It Ain't Me. I think the opening is that I ain't no senator. Is it I ain't no president's son?
Senator's son?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. And then when you merge that up with the halftime performance from Kendrick Lamar coming right out of the gate.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. He came right out of the gate and said the revolution will be televised. You know where that comes from. Gil Scott-Heron.
That's right.
So we can.
That's right. That's right.
Steve, here's our superpower, and this goes back to part of what Andy just said. Part of our superpower is actually dating ourselves and letting people know we've been around for a minute. We know a few things. We don't know everything, but we know a few things. And one of the things that I think you know, and I think folks like Andy know, and like Victor know, and others, is that we know how to fight. And we just have to remind ourselves. And I think that this knife fight that we're in, we need to bring some sledgehammers to it. And we need to let that be known. So as always, Steve, it's good to hear your voice. How are you holding up with this weather today?
I'm doing good. I'm getting ready to head into school here. I got a class this morning.
Cool.
And real quick, again, thank you for taking my call. I would suggest a book. It's in my history class. It's called The Triangle Fire, The Fire That Changed America. It's about a horrific incident in New York in 1910. They locked the girls in the factory because they didn't want them to take them unauthorized breaks. And 146 girls perished in the horrific fire. And that changed a lot of progressive stuff. People want to read a book that's going to light your fire. Check that book out too.
Good point. Good recommendation. Well, go to class, stay awake today, take good notes, and there'll be a test at the end of next week. So,
thank you.
All right, Steve.
Okay, talk
to you soon. All right. Good man. Two good men hitting us up with three. I'm sorry, Victor, didn't miss you in the last segment. Three good guys that are standing in the void, and take some energy from them, y'all. I'm serious. And, I know that we had some other folks on hold that couldn't be with us. I saw you holding Pam. We saw your call. I know you probably had to take care of something. So we know that you were probably bringing some heat as well. So kudos to you, Pam, who was probably our Pam on the west side of Chicago. Look, guys, roll up them sleeves. I'm telling you, we have to roll up our sleeves. And I thank you we got another quick comment. See if I can pull this up real quickly from one of our texts that we got. Yeah, I agree with you, Allison. We need more Andys. Absolutely. We need more Steves and we need more Victors. But we definitely need more Andys because he brought the heat this morning. That song, that is a great song by Creedence, Clearwater Revival. I was, Henry, the other night I was downloading some music onto my iPad and, kind of learned how to do that now with my iPad through Apple Music, So anyhow, a little bit of nerd moment. I learned something new, and my wife was there just kind of chuckling at me like, okay, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. But the point I'm making is about music and what Steve said. Music is a connector. If you look at the lyrics, we were watching this documentary on the creation of We Are the World. And bringing all these heavyweights in to record something that was about helping to change our society. And I guess it's kind of ironic that Steve mentioned the song and the importance of understanding what music can do for us. All forms of music. This is a rock and roll song. It's a stone cold rock and roll song. But when I look at We Are the World and what Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie and those other folks did to pull that together, starting with Harry Belafonte, who was, has been one of our greatest leaders of all time. It was about making sure that we use the tools that we have to come together to win this fight. And I forgot how We Are the World and that aid project was the sort of the beginning of using music with the leadership and vision of Bob Geldof to use music as a tool to raise funds for people who need funds and support throughout the world. What does that mean in this space? Going back to what Dr. Nathan Shrader said, take action right there in your local community. Find ways, guys. You don't have the luxury, and I know I preach this often, but it's because I mean it and it's important to me. We do not have the luxury of folding up our tent and letting these fools let a 4-year-old boy walk into, and to take this the right way, walk into my Oval Office as a citizen of the United States of America and let a 4-year-old boy and his father mistreat the office that way. I'm not going down that way. I'm not going down like that, y'all. And I'm going to do my dead level best to make sure that you guys don't either. So, grab your phones, grab your computer, your keyboards, and all the rest, and let folks in your districts know that that's unacceptable. Let's get together and get these seats in Florida. Let's get this one up in New York and make sure that we let them know we're here and we're bringing the sledgehammers and we're bringing the aluminum bats to the party. So with that, I'll leave you. Tomorrow's going to be a great show. We got our great friends that are going to be with us here in studio. Looking forward to being with you tomorrow. As always, thanks to my man Henry for keeping us on the rails. And always, guys, take a deep breath and make your life count. We will see you tomorrow.